And then one day, last October, NASDAQ called us and said, congratulations, you're compliant again. Start trading on Monday.
Welcome to Spotlight On, a podcast about how companies are built, from the people doing the building, one messy, exhilarating decision at a time.
I'm Matt Weigand, partner at Accel, and this is Spotlight On. I'm excited to be joined today by Arkady, founder and CEO of Nebius. Welcome, Arkady.
Thank you, Matt, for having me here.
I was thinking this week, actually, coming up to this podcast, I was thinking about how you and I first met. And it was just over a year ago, the Accel founder, Jim Schwartz, introduced us. And I was also thinking about the fact that you and I have met each other across 3 or 4 different countries over the past year. And one of the things that's incredible about you is you seemingly live on a plane. Where has that plane taken you recently?
Today, it brought me here, just several hours ago. I live between different locations. My family is in Tel Aviv, as well as several founders of Nebius in Tel Aviv. The majority of our engineers are in Amsterdam, so all the development and the back office is there. And here in the US, and particularly in San Francisco and the Bay Area, is where the majority of our clients are. So I'm spread between at least those 3 places, Tel Aviv, Amsterdam, San Francisco, and all over Europe, London, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm incredibly excited for this podcast and admittedly a bit nervous that we might not have enough time to cover what is arguably one of the most unique and fantastic founder journeys that we've encountered. So I'd love to start out with just hearing a bit of what you're up to today with Nebius. Tell us a bit about what Nebius is.
Nebius today is, it's formerly a public company, NASDAQ traded, but in the essence, it's a mid-stage startup. We're just developing our new business model. How we got here is there was a company established back in the 90s called Yandex, which eventually became the largest search engine of that region of Russia. When we started, it was even before the internet actually existed. It was first computers and networks, local area networks, wireless networks, and all that stuff. It was before Wi-Fi, actually. It was not called Wi-Fi. And then eventually we were building larger and larger networks. And then what we were building became an internet. And then one by one, all those companies and vendors were actually purchased by Cisco, more or less. We became the largest Cisco distributor by this. And then inside this company, basically, that was value-added distributor, a distributor of smart things, where you need to train, you need to build a network of competent resellers whom you train. And then on top of it, we had several other initiatives, startups, business units, whatever call it, where something else interesting was happening. And then when internet actually came, we thought that we were demonstrating our product online, created a page, and then eventually this page became very popular and became a search engine. And then in 2000, we decided, it's kind of business, it's something big. And this page became very popular, became number 1, and that became an advertising business. And for the next 10 years, it was advertising, online services, and then much, much more. Went public, a NASDAQ traded company since 2011, again founded in 1997. A year before Google was founded, we were competing with Alta Vista. Then went public, became much, much more than just a search engine, all online services you can imagine, mail, maps, whatever, and then went offline, became the largest taxi company like Uber, actually partnered with Uber later, there was a joint venture, and then went to all kinds of contemporary offline, online services, delivery, e-commerce, and so on.
I think you're being modest, actually, because in many ways it often gets called the Google of Russia, but in reality it was the Google, the Uber, the Instacart, the DoorDash, the
A lot
Spotify,
of models.
even the weather app,
Yeah.
as I recall. 25,000 employees, quite an incredible journey, that story.
Yeah, before the war, the Ukrainian war, it was 30 billion valuation. On
30
NASDAQ.
billion, wow.
Yeah, November 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And then the war started, and half of top management and like around 700 engineers, 1,000 engineers eventually left the country, and we started thinking, what else can we do?
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that actually several we call it business units or projects, which were targeted at global markets, now are more or less outside, like several startups, and also formerly we were still a Dutch company and traded on NASDAQ. So after 2 years, we managed to technically sell the Russian asset. That was how it was like implemented from a legal point of view. And so it was a Dutch company with 4 different ideas, startup ideas, and that's and 1,000 of engineers.
Yeah. And so you're on this journey in Yandex and building this very large consumer internet business. But I think what most people don't realize about the Yandex journey is that although it was very B2C, Yandex Cloud was actually in many ways the early innings of your B2B experience. And so you started to think about, maybe even before Nebius, what would eventually be a lot of the core of what you would build with Nebius in some ways.
Yeah, but Nebius is today, when we just left, we tried to do something in the cloud area, because there was no the ChatGPT moment didn't come yet. It came just a year after, and when it happened, we realized that the assets we have, the people, the talent, is very well fit to this new era. And this is what we know best. It's actually, our previous company was all based on AI. We actually, and the infrastructure which we built was hundreds of megawatts of data centers, and all the team who built it was with us. And we realized we can build this infrastructure for somebody else now.
So in a lot of ways, you've almost been riding a continuous wave of, the internet comes, you build into search, you start to see the infrastructure to support that search, you carry that infrastructure forward now into the Nebius journey, and AI becomes the next driver of that wave.
Part of the Yandex was very much focused and successful on one territory, but I always wanted, I think, so it was underutilization of this resource. It was so many talented people working just for a great market, but it was just 1-2% of global market.
Right.
I thought it deserved more to be exposed to larger markets. So in the last several years, since 2014, I was actually looking, what else can we do in the world? How can we apply what we have there somewhere else, and which forms, which formats? And actually, then unfortunately, when the work happened, we cut it without thinking what we're going to be doing. Just cut it, start everything from scratch. And then we realized actually most of the people who were working for this global project, they think the same. And they are around us. And we realized that there's like 1,000 of us. And that became a new company. And again, we didn't know when it started, we just left. We didn't know what it will be. What's next? And then, it was 2022, the beginning of the year, and only a year later, end of 22, this ChatGPT happened, and everybody realized that this will be the big thing. And then we realized, okay, we're relevant. We can do something here.
What was that journey like for you, bringing that team of both hardware and software engineers who I think rallied around you and wanting to join this next chapter? What was that journey like, bringing them into Amsterdam, bringing them into Tel Aviv, and getting going with what this next chapter would be?
This company, actually, the main asset is the engineers and data centers and tens of thousands of GPUs, of data centers, which we built and continue building, as well as several other interesting startups, which maybe we should cover later. But this is the main business, the AI infrastructure. This is what we decided we're building now.
Yep. And so you find yourself in this situation where you're arguably maybe the most resourced startup we've ever come across. You are already a public company, relisting under Nebius. You have, I'll call it 400 or 500 software AI engineers inside the organization. And you have billions of dollars on the balance sheet ready to go tackle this, which I think many would argue is necessary to go chase the vision that you have. But talk to me a bit about how you came up with what the vision for the assets that you had inside of the Nebius group. And obviously it's a hotly contested market infrastructure, but why did you think that your team had a chance to win in that market?
So the business which we're building now actually stays on, I would say, 3 legs. One is people with experience and technologies. And we have hundreds of engineers working together for many years, knowing what they're doing, with an experience of building one of the most advanced infrastructures for in AI, which was actually one of the largest clients of NVIDIA before all this happened, all this AI and ChatGPT happened. So that's definitely an asset. Plus, we had one of the data centers in Finland specifically with us. So we had a data center, we had people who built the infrastructure and Yandex Cloud in particular, and we knew how to do it. We had to recreate everything from scratch because we had no IP rights, but now we have it. We rebuild the code and everything, and now we have team and technology which builds data centers very efficiently, builds racks inside those data centers, which are very also efficient, and build the software stack on top of these racks, on top of this hardware. So it's a full stack AI cloud. This is the first leg, and we have it. The second leg was all this corporate and finance operation. We had to separate, pass through all the compliances, and eventually we became a NASDAQ traded. We didn't expect it to happen, but it used to be a NASDAQ traded company. The trade was suspended for 2.5 years. And then one day, last October, NASDAQ called us and said, "Congratulations, you are compliant again. You start trading on Monday."
And this was if I recall right, this was a Friday phone call to trade on Monday.
Yeah,
because I remember you calling me saying, "Matt, our conversation just transitioned to being a pipe at this point because I think come Monday we're a public company."
We were just a startup talking to investors like you, what should we build together? And then NASDAQ called and said, "Compliant, congratulations, traded." And we had one day to prepare a press release. That's all we could do.
Yeah.
But then we continued with this pipe, and it happened several weeks later, and we've got Accel. We're proud to have you plus NVIDIA, plus several dozen of venture funds, hedge funds, long-term investors. It was $700 million transaction, which we actually didn't plan. We thought that we will make a small deal just to set a price to go public later, but then we went public after all this transition. Yes, it used to be a $30 billion company. We have much less from this transaction, but still it's a couple of $1 billion. It's more than $2 billion of cash. And not all of our peers, competitors have this free cash. So the second leg is a separate company, NASDAQ traded also. Not too many companies are NASDAQ traded in our sector now, with its own cash, with zero debt. We will be raising more, of course, because in the business where these two legs, technology and capital, work together, and they're two necessary parts. You need to have good technology and people who understand it, and you need to have a lot of capital to build infrastructure. Infrastructure business is very capital intensive. So we have these two basic legs. Now we're working on the third leg, which is go to market. Now we need to sell it.
Yes.
So far we built already, again, we recreated the software stack. We have new versions of our hardware, and we continue building data centers. And now we realized that we need to build it mostly in US, and we're moving it all in US, all these data centers. Today we have a network with data center in Finland, Paris, Kansas City here in US, and we're building a lot more, and majority of those will be here. Because the customers are here.
Right.
And even the European customers actually ask us to build in US.
So it's those three legs that give you this competitive advantage, and you're continuing to execute against all those three. When you and I first met and we started talking about what would become Nebius and the business plan for Nebius, it was very interesting to see the emerging infrastructure players in the market. All of them seemingly had a piece of one of those legs, but very rarely did you, and I would argue you haven't come across an emerging competitor to the hyperscalers that checks the box on those three legs.
Yeah.
And we're talking about hardware and software engineers that have stood up infrastructure at a layer and a scale that very few in the world have ever done. And that was already being deployed across many data centers in your previous company. And so it's exciting to see where you guys sit today. You have a lot of these unfair advantages that got us really excited about having the opportunity to work together. But I think you mentioned an interesting...
We treat them as fair.
I think you mentioned an interesting point, which is the idea that you're European and you guys are in Amsterdam and Tel Aviv predominantly for the employee base, hiring rapidly in America, but the customer set is very much in America. What is Europe? What is your belief about the future of AI for Europe and your role in Europe in that future?
Well, I do believe in the future of Europe in technology in general, in AI in specifically. Definitely, there is a lot of talent in Europe. We see a lot of startups in Europe who work in this area. France, Germany, UK. DeepMind is in UK, Mistral and others in France, Black Forest, Alpha in Germany, many other countries. Israel has it. So there is a lot of activity going on in AI in that area. But the majority of the clients today, again, it's in a very early stage, is in US, specifically here in the Valley, in San Francisco and around. Because the first clients of all this infrastructure, these are the big tech companies, the hyperscalers and the big ecosystems who compete to build superintelligence, and a lot of smaller startups who develop their own models and a lot of new applications. And these are startups, we call them AI natives, who predominantly are financed by venture capital, which is all here. The majority of it is here. And the companies are here, and they are the first clients of such services, of this infrastructure. But it's changing. And more we will see corporate clients building, utilizing AI in their everyday applications. First, we call them digitally native clients, people who develop digital applications which we use every day. They they build more and more AI there, and then just normal corporate market. It's a general purpose technology which will be everywhere. And more corporates, the most advanced financial companies, hedge funds, they're using a lot of these models, pharmaceuticals, medicine, robotics, you name it. There's different areas where the corporations starting developing and using AI for them, and it will be more and more the main market. I think in several years will be there.
I want to switch focus a bit here and talk about you as a founder. And this is not your first rodeo. In fact, you've been a repeat founder even prior to the Yandex days with CompTech. And one of the things that has followed your career has been this prolific level of talent around you. You've always been able to hire just a phenomenal team to support you on that journey. And I'd love to hear a bit about how you think about building teams, because right now you have a big task ahead of you, being this startup with massive ambitions and scaling very quickly, both on the infrastructure and investment side, but also on the team side. So what are some of the learnings you've had throughout your career of building the best team around you?
First of all, it's not like I build talent around. I usually you see a talented team or a talented engineer or something, and you actually then build around it. It's like producers in art or in the movie industry. First comes the talent, and then you build a talented musician or a director, script writer, and then you build a process around them, and the result is the product, the movie, the music, whatever. Your team is usually people who serve the talent, and you need to build this serving environment where the talent feels growing, blossoming. And that's what we're trying to do. Oh, look at this office, actually. This is also built to these principles. You try to create an environment when talented people could exist and create.
So I will say that you being a public company and a public startup in many ways isn't the only unique thing about this journey. In fact, one of the other really unique things about the Nebius journey, which has followed you throughout your career, is this team of 1,000 around you. They're tinkers, they're builders. They share a lot of the, I would say, entrepreneurial DNA that you have. And as a result, you see companies being built around the core of the businesses that you've worked on in the past. Sometimes those get consumed into the core as part of a broader story for the business, and sometimes they exist as independent companies that scale in a very different direction than the core. Today at Nebius, that's no different. The Nebius group is not just what we've been talking about today in the world of infrastructure, but there's actually a number of projects that your team has iterated on over many years to bring to market. And so talk a bit about what else exists inside of the umbrella of Nebius, and we'd love to hear a bit about those businesses.
So the largest part today, again, is this AI infrastructure, a set of data centers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of GPUs, which we have and offer to the market. That's the first business called Nebius. In the Nebius group, we also have several other things. Maybe the next largest would be, I would say, the autonomous driving division, which was, again, one of the 5, I think, companies who used to have cars without anybody at the front row, with no safety drivers on public roads, available as a service to anyone. This is what
Weigand, arguably the fastest to develop that. If we look back at the history of those 5 companies, from the time you guys began that development, it was one of the fastest.
Yeah, it took us like 5-6 years to get there. And yes, again, there was a service running, taxis and delivery robots. And again, it was just a few in the world which actually had cars running like you see today outside here, Waymos on the streets of San Francisco. That was a service which people created. Then they had to leave, recreate everything from scratch. And now they exist as a big group of engineers, more than 200 engineers in Austin, Texas, also here in the US. And it's called AV Ride, Autonomous Vehicle Ride. AV Ride, a separate company, part of Nebius Group today, which is one of 4 companies with which Uber signed up last year, 2024, as their partner. This area is evolving very fast. Since last December, since a month ago, there was a lot of change in this area. Yeah, in 2025 there will be a lot of news in autonomous, I think. And it started moving very, very fast. Yet another part, again, called business units, is one of the businesses we had back in the Yandex days was data labeling. When humans train machines, any machine learning algorithm needs to be trained by humans. Several years ago, it was when humans was labeling their data. This is a traffic light, this is a bus on the picture, this is cat, this is dog, whatever.
Right.
All that is automated these days. Gen AI does all this work, no need. But there's a lot of other tasks when human trained machine, or a combination of Gen AI algorithms and humans, experts, train and evaluate all these new models. This group of people and companies called Taloka. The major customers are the super big companies who develop these super models, super intelligence, you name it, Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, they are all clients of Taloka, and Taloka helps them to train these models of the future. It's a separate company again. There will be some changes there, some more partners coming, hopefully soon. So AI cloud, autonomous vehicles, this model training evaluation, Taloka. And yet another business unit or company is in the area of education or reskilling, it's called these days. It's when, I would say, Taloka is when humans train machines. This is when machines help to train people, humans. Again, it started back in the COVID days when we had 700,000 of unemployed taxi drivers. We had to do something with it. And we started courses to retrain them into something else, like coding or data analysts. Eventually, again, the COVID ended. Taxi drivers became taxi drivers again, but it became a very popular set of courses for people changing their profession.
Okay.
Grown-up people, I don't know, 30, 40 years old, 50 years old sometimes, come and get retrained in 6-8 months, get retrained into these new specialties. Data analysts, data scientists, coders, from, I don't know, some marketing background, financial background, whatever. They change the profession. And in the end, actually, they get hired because what we train them, it's a deficit specialty. Everybody wants it. So companies come to hire them. More than 70% of the people who graduate the courses get the jobs. And if previously they get low-wage jobs, simple jobs, now they're trained and the salary may double. And this business unit is called Triple 10. Last June, it was called the best IT bootcamp in America by Fortune magazine. And it's growing very fast. Tens of thousands of people get trained there, and now they're expanding to Latin America from US. The first market was US, and now it's Latin America as well.
So now we have the Nebius group kind of painted for us. So you have the core infrastructure for the world of AI, developing data centers all the way from the soil through to the software. You're building your own data centers, greenfield in many ways, and own data centers, scaling that through to the software platform on top to allow people to access those models, to train their models. And then you have a number of business units that have been born. And I would venture to guess that that group only grows knowing the employee base that you have around you and the way that they like to tinker and develop. So it's going to be exciting to see how it scales over time.
I'm sure there will be something else, some other groups. And these are the key is to find some revenue source which is more or less stable to make the main company profitable, and then somewhere we're in an industry where something is growing all the time. Some new ideas, some new startups, internal startups appear.
So the sands of AI are moving quickly beneath our feet these days. You obviously have an ear to the ground on what's happening in the industry, but where do you go for your information? Have you read anything interesting lately?
Several days ago, I came across, through some link, an interesting article which I read in the play. Speaking of plays. It's about actually the future of AI. The guys try to analyze the economic consequences of this AI revolution and actually how to quantify it. Everybody understands it's a general purpose technology like electricity or whatever, everything, there will be efficiency everywhere. But how specifically, what it is? And their approach was the easiest way to get AI implemented is for where we actually have remote tasks. When you have something, remote service, you actually don't care who provides it. A human, who is on the other side of the line, a human or an algorithm. They start analyzing actually these remote services. What professions and what areas could be automated through remote services. Unfortunately, there was COVID recently, where instead of normal, 3-5% of remote workers, there was 30% of remote work. And they just looked at those 30% of processes which became remote during COVID. And what's interesting, actually, the GDP of US, Europe didn't change much during COVID. So people switched, 30% of the people switched to remote, and the GDP didn't come down, which says something.
Right.
So you switch to remote, the value you create is the same. And then this remote part actually is the most easier automated.
To be disrupted. Exactly.
Disrupted. So this is the area of disruption, and this is the area of creation of the next wealth value. And they just looked at the which works were remote. They took a code of all the US professions. I think processed with ChatGPT or something to see what areas, what professions, not even professions, but skills will be automated first. And they came to the conclusion to quantify the things that if this part is automated, it will be a GDP growth for a country like America, like 25% a year for like a decade. This is a kind of revolution which happened with agriculture or, I don't know, textile industry in the UK 200 years ago. Huge change with immense growth.
Yeah, actually looking at it, the economics of what AI impact could be.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
This is the first time when I actually saw somebody try to quantify it.
Well, you have a lot on your plate, traveling around the world, many different business units, a big ambition for what you want to build in Nebius. What are you doing when you're not focused on all of what we've covered today? What are you doing when you do get that free moment of time?
2 weeks ago, I was skiing with my kids in the Alps. That was a great week.
Yeah, that's good. It's nice to hear that you do get away, that you shut off at moments of time, brief moments of time.
After a year of very tumultuous year, it was a nice week out.
Well deserved. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we're really excited to be joining you on the journey with Nebius.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Arkady.